James, what does the Icon Award mean to you?
It's a really recognition. I realized this year that I've been doing this for 31 years, and so for me, it's very meaningful. It's an opportunity to look back on a large body of work and for me to thank all of the people that have contributed to it, which I'm looking forward to doing. And it's a real milestone for me. It means a lot. My performing rights career started with BMI back in 1973, so it's very meaningful for me.
You mentioned that you've been doing films for over 30 years. That's an extraordinary time. And I wonder, has the job itself changed much over that time, or is it still basically the same job?
I think it's the same job. I think it's, about telling stories. It's about storytelling and merging beautifully and seamlessly with the images. And I think it's always been about that. I think there's a lot more music now than there was when I started in a movie. I seem to rewrite things a whole lot more because the demo making process is different and the picture changes so often because of the Avid. So, it's a little faster paced, but I've adapted to it. I enjoy it.
And how has technology changed the job and what you have to do?
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, I grew up first as a classical musician, but then I spent a lot of years as a session musician and working in the studios as a synthesist. So the whole process of making demos and using the technology to write music is very comfortable for me. So it's really good. I think what people like me who use sequencers and samples to compose have to watch out for is that those samples don't dictate the limits and the whole range of what you're trying to write.
You've never really been pigeonholed, or like many composers, you've been able to work in many different genres. What do you think that is?
I don't really know. I mean, I like all kinds of different music, so I've felt that every time I was presented with an opportunity to write something I wasn't comfortable with, that was a real lesson and a real opportunity, and thrust myself into the abyss and just try and make it happen. So I feel like I do that every time I do a movie, quite honestly.
Do you have a handful of favorite scores that you've done over the years?
Oh, sure. I have some that have meant a lot to me for one reason or another. I mean, I guess The Fugitive is one of them, although that was really a nightmarish process for me too, because I was so terrified. And there have been a bunch of them.
I wonder if probably a lot of young composers ask you for advice or perhaps come to you. What would be your advice to a young composer who wants to get into this world and score for films and TV?
That's always a tough question. I'm asked that a lot, and I even when I'm not asked, I try and spend time thinking about how should I answer that. And I think it's harder to get into the business now than it was when I got in. There are a million more people vying for the same jobs now than there were when I started. But I do have faith that quality will win out, and it's the obvious things. It's collaborating with a young filmmaker, just writing, just composing. Just write. Writers write, and just make good sounding demos and invest some money in some good technology, because a lot of good sounding technology is pretty cheap. You need to make a good sounding demo, because even people that can't write music know how to make a good sounding demo, and some people can't tell the difference. So make sure your good music has a good sounding demo.
How important is dramatic instinct when you're working in film?
I think it's everything. I think there's only so much you can learn. I think people either know what the music's supposed to feel like or they don't, and you learn a lot of technique. You learn to try not to overwrite. You learn to spot things, but really most of that is instinct. I really believe that. And I think one of the greatest about that is my friend Hans. I think Hans is so good at knowing how interesting and how unusual a cue can be, but how it can ultimately be telling the story and really serve the picture in an interesting, unique way.